Well, hello everybody. I hope this is working, and welcome to Unpacked Lunch. I'm just having a little look online to make sure that we're all up and running smoothly as we normally are. Really glad that you're joining with us, and if you were around on Sunday and watched online, welcome to you. We're going to be unpacking some of what was spoken about then. If you didn't watch online, please do stick around with us. There's going to be a whole bunch of stuff here that might be helpful for you in your life. But then after this, after we spend maybe this next 20 minutes, half an hour or so together, why not head over to the Forge Facebook page and look online and catch up with Sunday. It was a lot of fun. Here with senior leader Steve Fenning. Steve, how you doing?
Hey, I'm fine, thanks. A bit hot, Johnny, but I'm sitting in my summer house. Doors are open, sun shining. What could be better, hey?
Absolutely. Hey, it is good. It is good. And already seeing people come in and comment. And so welcome Lynn, welcome Nikki, Trev, Andy, Sam, Chris. So glad that you're with us. If you've got any questions around the topic that we're going to be looking at, we're going to be carrying on with the series Better Together, looking at community with insiders, with outsiders, and intimacy with God as well. If you've got any questions around that, but also any questions around faith or life outside of that, please do stick them in the comments below, and we're going to ask them to Steve a little bit later on. But Steve, Sunday was Father's Day.
It was.
You are a father. Now, I already know what you got, and I think it's a brilliant gift. And so fill us in a little bit about what happened on Sunday.
Yeah, so Sunday, I was in such a happy place because my kids came over so we could have lunch together, and we did games out in the garden. We had lunch out in the garden too. And they bought me a bottle of whiskey, a Bowmore, which I'm very happy about. But also the added surprise was that, Johnny, I want a little bit more respect from you. And from now onwards, when you say we've got our senior leader, I don't want you to say Steve Fenning anymore. I want you to say Lord Stephen James Fenning, who is married to Lady Sarah Catherine Fenning, because I have been made a lord. I don't know if you can see this, but I am such a proud man because I own a 5-foot square piece of land next to Lake Coniston Water up in the Lake District. I even now have a coat of arms. That is my coat of arms as Lord Stephen James Fenning. So, yes, so subjects who are watching, welcome, after a big old handshake. And my biggest confusion since that point really has been when people are praying and they just start, dear Lord, I keep saying yes. Just because I think they're speaking to me. But so I've been made a Lord. I'm very happy.
That is brilliant. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then from now on, all birthdays and Father's Days, they can just buy you stuff to put on your 5-foot.
Yes, obviously. I can't build on it, unfortunately. But
I guess you can't build out, but can you not build up?
Oh, probably. Yeah, so that was a great present. That made us laugh a lot. And really good.
Excellent. Hey, that is a great present. And so welcome, Lord Fenning. Welcome, Joanne, who's just joined us again. If you've got any questions around life, around faith, around the series that we're in at the moment, Better Together, please do put them on. And we're going to ask Steve a little bit later on. But Steve, run us through, as I said, second part of Better Together. Yep. What did you speak about?
So it was the second in this series called Better Together. And honestly, I believe we are better together because God has made us to be in community. And what I picked up on Sunday was that there are 3 groups of people that we, in a sense, we need to have in our lives in order for us to grow and flourish and live the life that Jesus calls us to. I spoke about those who are further ahead than us in faith. They are people that we can learn from. Kind of really benefit from spending time with. There are those who are in the kind of a similar place to ourselves, who are on the same journey as we are, and in a similar place. And those people are really important for mutual support and mutual accountability. And then there are those who are a few steps behind us, that it's, in a sense, it's our responsibility and role to invest in, to help encourage them on in faith. And so some of what we have learnt from others, we can then pass on to them. This was the model for the disciples, that the disciples learnt from Jesus. They learnt together in community. And when it came to leading the church in after Pentecost, these were the church leaders And so they led together. They were known as the apostles, so the teaching came from them. So they were then teaching other people. And with the early church devoted themselves to what? To the apostles' teaching and to life together. And as a result of passing on what they were learning, people were added to their number daily. And so it's the life that God calls us to. That disciple means learner, so we're always to be learners, and we're then to pass that learning on to others. But we do that within the context of community. So basically, I ask the question: who are you learning from? Who are you mutually accountable to and encouraging? And who are you investing in? And if we can't think of people in one or any of those categories, then that gives us something to work on.
Great. It's amazing that leadership models that Jesus exampled 2,000 years ago are still going strong and still is what worked. So who is it that you've learned from?
So many. That's so many. And I love to learn. I don't love to learn through books because I'm not a particularly good reader. And so I would learn from others through talks and through mentoring kind of conversations too. And so where I am now as a person really comes down to some really key people in my life who have helped to shape me and shape my thinking and to shape my walk with God. And so I could almost look at 4 key stages in my life. There was those early years of childhood and teenage years. And there were, there was my relatives, Win and Jill Fenning. They invested in me. They gave me responsibility. They were amazing. So they were key for me, along with this couple that I mentioned on Sunday called Victor Jack and Nigel Taylor. Both of those two really invested in my life and gave me huge opportunities. So that was my childhood and teenage years. And then when I joined a team called the Salt Mine Trust when I was 19, I had 3 years. This was really starting to grow in some of the gifts that God had given to me. And there were a couple of people within Salt Mine who were massive. A man called Doug Barnett, who was an evangelist and church leader. And he kind of took me under his wing a bit and gave me various opportunities to learn and to grow. His teaching was brilliant. And a guy called Mark Simmons, who I worked alongside, he was my team leader. And again, I learned so much from him. He came from a different church tradition to me. He was a Methodist. And so he viewed certain things wrongly, I thought. And then as I got to know him, my understanding grew and stretched so much more. My third kind of key stage was after Sarah died, and was trying to work through grief and trying to work out where God was, because it almost seemed as if God was distant. And I met up with a guy called Trevor Waldock, who was so important for me in making sense of grief and also in helping me not to panic when God didn't seem to be answering, or I couldn't easily connect with God at that time through that grieving process. So he was really key, and basically he shaped my thinking with regards to leadership too. He was such a key person. I guess for about 6 or 7 years, I met with him almost every month, so I could just learn and learn and learn, and I'd ask all kinds of questions from him. And then in this kind of the later stages, over the last little while, I think a guy called Rob Whittaker, with regards to spiritual insight and understanding of the Bible, he's been brilliant for me. And I've loved listening to his talks and meeting up with him. And also for leadership and helping me to have confidence in who I am as a leader, Bridget McIntyre. Our MBE. Now, does an MBE beat a Lord? I'm really not sure.
I think it definitely beats a Lord, Steve.
Yeah, okay, all right. But again, she has been really important. So she has mentored me too. So they would be some of the, there are tons and tons of key people that I've learned from.
Mm. And we're grateful for those people because they've invested in the Steve Fenning that we get to invest in us. And so, Steve, know that you're incredibly grateful for those people and for the mentors that you've had. I'm incredibly grateful for the people who have invested in my life, and just countless names that have allowed me to get to where I am at the moment. But I think we'd both probably say we've been extraordinarily lucky to have the people that we've had speaking into our lives and investing in us. So how is it that you've gone about having those mentors and people to learn from?
Um, I've just been proactive. Basically, whenever I get a sniff of someone who I think could have a positive influence on my life, I've contacted them. And basically, I've just said, "Is there any chance that we could meet for a coffee? I'd love to learn from you." And so I've done that over and over and over again throughout my life, and I still do that. So yeah, definitely, I think my proactive and positive kind of nature pushes me to do that. And I've traveled miles to do that. So just a few years back, I was really struggling. I'd always loved worship and I, singing songs and that kind of stuff. And I just went through a stage when I thought, I am bored of this. And I got really worried. And I got worried about this idea that I could spend time by myself, because I'm a relational person. I always run after spending time with people. And so I contacted Rob Whittaker and I just said, "Rob, can I just get some time with you?" And he says, "Yeah, you can have a day with me. You come up here." And so I traveled up to the Lake District, traveled early in the morning so I could have the whole day with him, and then traveled all the way back late at night. And because it was so worth it, and I was so desperate to learn and to understand what was going on, why was this change, what was happening within me. And always, whenever those kind of times happen, it's always, am I losing my faith? and it just causes those little panics, because suddenly something isn't normal and something sits uncomfortably. And so I always search out the people who will help me to work through those, to embrace those times, because they're times that everyone will experience. And if I can learn through that, then I can help others who go through that, and to help them not to panic. I think Trevor Waldock, my mentor for about 7, 8, 10 years, and I still meet up with him on occasions. I met him once on a leadership day, and I was so bowled over by him and what he was saying. It was just like, but he was living in Southampton, and then I heard that he'd moved to Malden, just outside of Chelmsford. And so I contacted him and I said, "Look, I met you on this day. You don't know who I am, but I would love to meet with you. Is there any chance?" And so every month I would travel down to Malden and have a morning with him. And he gave his time for free. And again, he was so important. There were times of when I was struggling about my own walk with God, and he helped with that. I'd have huge questions about leadership, and he would help me with that. Sarah and I went through some pretty rocky times in our early stages of marriage, and he helped me with that. And he became this go-to person. He was the key person for me over those years, just investing in my life. And Sarah and I have remained married and more in love than ever. And part of that is down to Trevor Waldock's work in me during those early years. So I think, so I've searched after it, and I've found that mentors or people who are further ahead than us will nearly always give us time if we are proactive, if we go with questions, if we take notes, if we put into practice what they're telling us. Because otherwise it's just a waste of their time. And I never want to waste people's times. And so, even when I meet with Bridget now, Bridget doesn't know what we're going to talk about, but I will always go with, "Bridget, I've got these 2 things that I'm struggling with at the moment. Now, and she helps me process and work through those things. And so if you want to have a mentor, even if it's a spiritual mentor or a leadership mentor, be so keen to learn that you go with questions, that you take notes, that you put it into practice, that you don't always talk about yourself, but you're always wanting to learn from them. And I think when people first come to faith, it's really important they have a mentor or a friend or a group that they can learn with. I think if you don't have that, people will nearly always fall away. They'll certainly struggle, and then they'll fall away. And so it's having people who are a little further ahead in those early stages of faith are vital. And I think as you grow in your faith, those people become less vital, because you start to learn to self-learn. And that's where reading books, and that's where listening to podcasts and listening to talks and people that you don't necessarily meet, you can learn so much from those too.
Hey, I love that you've answered that question without just saying, go up to someone and ask them to mentor you. Because it's like, that's a crazy big thing to ask of someone. And hearing that, I can imagine, is something that's like, oh man, that's going to be such a time commitment. And do I know you? And what's this about? And so on. But actually that question is gold. I think just that go to someone and say, can I have a moment of your time to ask you these questions? And it's
Yeah.
like when you meet up with someone and ask them questions and they're answering, hey, what is that?
Yes.
So I think that's brilliant. So
Yeah.
I guess for everyone, the question that they can be asking themselves is, who is it who is it that would be a good person to ask these questions to?
Yeah.
I think that's great. Just hello to some people who are tuning in. Joanne, welcome. Brenda, hello to you. Callum, who's watching as well. So glad that you guys are with us today as we continue to unpack Better Together, episode 2. If you've got any questions, as always, stick them in the chat, and then we'll pick them up just afterwards. Or if you're watching this back online, catching up with some of our midweek content, and you have a question, put your question in the comments and watch back for next week, because at the end of that one, we'll stick those questions in as well. And we'd love to give some time to some of your thoughts and some of the stuff that you're dealing with. So, Steve, what about peers doing life together? So less mentors who are further ahead of us in life. What about the people next to us?
Yeah, you see, I think some people naturally seek others out to do life with. So, as I said, I'm a relational person. I just love spending time with people. And so I'm drawn to certain people. And I recognize that. And I just want to share life with them. Whereas others, I think, will need help with that, which is why within our church, we structure ourselves around what we call circles of 10-month groups or running mates, because I think these become key. So in a way, do I need a 10-month group? No, I don't, because I have so many friendships and so many people who encourage me on in faith. But I recognize that I need to be part of it because, it's not just about me, it's about others. And so therefore I want to be involved with others too. But I think we all need to have people who are cheering us on, who are supporting us. I just think that's essential in life. And if you want to stunt growth, or if you're not bothered in growing, then honestly, keep friendship surface and keep church at arm's length. There we go. If you don't want to grow, then just do that. You can stay connected, but that's fine. But if you want to grow, then you need to have people who will motivate you, who will ask the hard questions of you, who will see whether what you're learning you're actually putting into practice, people who will pray for you, people who are for you, people who understand you, as well as you doing the same for them. I just think that is essential if we want to grow in faith. And so I have lots of people in my life, some who are part of the Forge, others who are outside of the Forge. And honestly, I value them all so much. So I have 2 Zoom calls straight after this with 2 different church leaders, a church leader in Ipswich and a church leader in Bury. And there we'll be sharing life, we'll be sharing what's happening with church. And we do a bit of life together. We do a bit of honest sharing together. And I love that. I love spending time with those guys. So I have a key person. So Steve Miles, he was at school with me. He was the year below me. He's been what I would consider my best friend throughout the whole of my life, really. And he is someone that I can share anything with. Now, we don't always see each other. We don't always call each other. But he is my Mr. Dependable friend. And he is wise, and he speaks into my life, and we keep a check out on each other. I've been part of a running mates group for about the last 7 years with Adam Golding, Chris Cobbold, and Dave Hanna. And again, they have been really key for us. I remember we've read an article about why so many Christian marriages fall apart. And in a sense, that was a driver for us to be meeting up to say, come on, guys, let's make sure we're not one of those statistics. And we've met in pubs, we've met in coffee shops, we've met in homes, just to be able to share life together. And we would talk about our work life, our married life, our family life. We'd talk about our spiritual life, our leisure life. And it's just to be able to create those honest places where, every now and again we can put our hands up and say, I really messed up at this time. Sarah and I get on so well together because Chris Cobbold would never let me off challenging or apologizing to Sarah when I'd done something wrong, when I would just laugh it off, but Sarah would be angry. And he'd say, well, go back and apologize then. And do you know what I mean? And of course I knew I needed to do that, but I wasn't doing that until Chris spoke into the situation. I have church leaders around the country that I keep in contact with and share life with. And again, for me, last December, I was in a really low place. I just didn't feel that the church was going forward well. We'd gone through the redundancies that had messed my life up like I don't know what. And I thought, as I was meeting with these other church leaders in the network, the Further Faster network that the Forge is part of, we had to get into threes. And I said, look, I'll go first. This is where I'm at. And I was all miserable, doom and gloom. And I said, you've got great things happen. And then the guy who went next started crying. And I said, but everything's going fine for you. He says, no, it's not. And all of a sudden, I got an insight into these other two guys who faced the same challenges, who hit the same criticisms, who struggle with confidence in certain areas of life. And honestly, it was such a relief. It was such a relief, because I just thought, I'm rubbish and they're really good. And we're all rubbish. So, hey, happy days. So for me, doing life together is just essential. And more recently, Mike Walsh has played a really key part for me. One of the elders here at the Forge, we met yesterday morning at 7:30 just for an hour to talk. And I hugely just value those safe places, especially when I mess up, when I've lied over something or if I've watched something I shouldn't. If I don't tell people, it remains hidden and secret and doesn't get dealt with. So for me, yeah, really, really important.
You've named some real big hitters there, Steve. So if you could stop stealing them all, that would be brilliant.
Yeah, sure.
I loved what you shared around meeting up. I think it was with Chris and Dave, and looking at through making sure you don't just become another divorce, statistic. Yeah. Going through that book. If you know Steve, if you're watching, or if you know Dave, or if you know Chris, I'm sure you'll be with me in almost feeling like, why, out of all the people, why would you be having to talk about that? Why would you why would you be reading a book about that? Why would you be discussing that and making sure? But I guess it's actually that consistency of meeting up, getting people around you and looking at those issues so that you don't have to think about that as much. But just think, love the realness involved in that and love those stories.
Yeah, and I think also in certain stages of life, and so we can draw close to people for a period of time, and then it's almost as if the purpose of that friendship or that peer mentoring, that accountability, in a sense, that comes to a natural close, and then you kind of move on to someone else because there is something different that's needed. And I just think that's natural. So we mustn't hold on too tightly. I just think, and nor loosely. I think it's that judgment call that certain people are key for us at certain times in our lives.
Hey, that's good. That's so good. Hey, if you're watching with us online live, let us know in the chat if you're watching. It would be great to see you, your name pop up. If you've got any questions around this or anything else, please do put them in, even if you're watching back, and we'll make sure that we get an answer to you. Steve, just listening to some of that, I'm sure a lot of people, almost like the previous question, when they heard you talk about mentors and they were thinking, oh, that's good for you, what about me? And you talked about just being so proactive in making that happen. I'm sure some people will be hearing about you having these great peers around you, running mates, you called them. So for those people, how do they get into running mates, and what's the purpose of that for those people?
Yeah, so when these were first set up, I think it's about 2017 or something like that. This is when we were really pushing it as a church. It was very much that with our 10-month groups, you sign up to whichever group that you want. And when it comes to running mates, rather than organizing it for people, we would just encourage people to organize it for themselves. It could be people within your small group, you're a 10-month group. It could be just friends. Just choose 2 or 3 people of the same gender and look to meet up on a monthly basis and look to have that desire to grow, to push each other to grow, to become more like Jesus. So on the whole, it's always the case of, if you want to be part of a 3 or a 4 group called Running Mates, then find those people. And what we've discovered is that for some people, that works and they can do that. Others, they don't know where to start, or they ask someone and they say, no, I'm already in a group, thanks. And then it's like, well, I don't know if I have the confidence to ask again. So if you're in that place, please do contact us. Now, at the moment, we don't particularly have a list of people, but if people contact us, we can keep a list and we can say, look, these people here are looking for the same as you. Why don't you meet for a coffee and see whether there's a connection? Or why don't you meet on Zoom and see if there's a connection. I just think what you want to be able to do is to provide or to find a safe place to share where you can motivate each other and act on what God's saying. So go ahead and do it yourself. And if you can't do that yourself, then contact us and we will try to find people who you can connect with. And it works both ways.
Hey, so you've heard the benefit from Steve in terms of all that's offered. I can say the same with Sam, Jack and Joe. You could be one email away on potentially finding those people who could do the same for you. So
Jonny, can I just ask, how has it helped you, or how does it help you?
So the phrase that I always bring up when talking about running mates is that it's an opportunity to share the last 10%. And so you may have heard me speak about this before if you've watched probably even on Unpacked Lunch. But for most people, we'll share the top 10%, the 10% we want everyone to see and the rest of it. But actually, it's the nitty gritty stuff. It's the stuff that's hidden. It's the stuff that nobody else really sees or nobody really hears about. It's the inner monologue in your head. It's the thoughts that are easy to push out. That actually, it's those unpacking those things that can really make the difference. And so it's for me, it's been a difference maker in the sense of the trust that I have with those guys, where I can bounce thoughts off. We met up on when did we meet up? We met outside, keeping the meters apart and the rest of it in a garden. It must have been Tuesday, Monday, some point early this week or last week, I think. They came round, and for me, there'd been something boiling up in me, like a passion that I had that I didn't even realize was all that much of a passion, but it was something that was just kind of grating on me, probably for a fair few months now. And it was just an opportunity where I could, for the first time, vocalize and articulate my frustrations and passions and sense of disgruntlement at injustices and things like that. And so to be able to communicate that with them, go into depth about why that was and what the next steps I should be taking, because for me at that point it just felt so big. That was just so invaluable. And so that was one example, but there'd be countless others of just where I need support, where I've had to speak out and just say, guys, like I'm struggling here. Like I don't really know how I'm going to cope in this area or this area, or what should I do with this? Or I've got this complexity going on. To have those guys in my corner, knowing they're going to be cheering me on whatever happens, but also to offer wisdom. And trust is so good. And so that would be like some form of officialness in running mates, but would have other guys as well.
And I think the other thing is, Jonny, that we'll have people ahead of us that we can learn from, but we also learn from one another. There's that peer learning, which and again in my experience, one of our meetups, it might focus very much on one person because of a certain situation that they're facing, and then the next time it might all be or lots of it be focused on me because I'm facing something. You know what I mean? And it just somehow gets shared out, and there is something really growing and soul enriching through being able to do that. But we have to be honest, and I think that's the really key thing, that if we hold back, then it doesn't. I don't think it works, to be honest. I think you suddenly realise, this wasn't as open as I thought it was, and then there's that sense of disappointment. So I think you have to make that promise that we'll be open with each other.
And I remember the first time that we met as a group, we were all kind of going around and just sort of said, I think we met up once as a social just to hang out. And then I said at that point, next time, if we can all come with one thing that's going on in life right now that might be a little bit difficult to share. And I can remember meeting that second time, and we were all going around one by one. And it was like, it was interesting because it was like we weren't sharing the last 10%. We were probably sharing like the last 30. And so it was more vulnerable than we'd normally be. And we were kind of all right with that, at that point. But then it got round to, I think it was Jack. And I won't share what he said or anything like that, but I can remember Jack, and you could see him like toying with like, hey, do I like release this? And do I share this? And do I trust you with this? But he kind of took it upon himself to go deeper than any of us dared to. And I think the appreciation in the room at that point just reached a new level, and it was his vulnerability, his bravery, that allowed it even to become what it has now, a year or so on.
Yeah.
And that's been great.
Great.
So we've had people who are running mates, people that neither one of us are really further on than the other. We're just trying to work through it together. We've had mentors who we want to ask questions to and really be proactive in getting. You said, Steve, that particularly if you're new to faith, actually having those people around you and in your corner is so important. We too can become those people. You certainly have been for me and for so many others. So how do you go about investing in other people?
Partly, I'm paid to do it.
That's what I really wanted to hear, Steve. Thanks.
So it is my job. All right. So I have to acknowledge that. I think lots of people are just really scared by this whole thing. They don't mind sharing a bit of themselves. They don't mind learning from others. This passing on to others, I think, can feel very daunting for people. They're scared. I often hear, I don't know enough. I wouldn't know what to say or do, and I wouldn't know who to invest in. And I understand those, because if that sounds so formal, I now have someone to invest in. Do you know what I mean? And so, of course, there'll be some of us who become mentors to others. But it's still about intentionally passing on what we have learnt on to others. So I don't know enough. Do you know what? I've discovered that it's as much about asking questions as it is giving answers, because it's helping the other person. So what did you think of this? So if you've read a chapter, what questions arose for you? And then they start talking about the question. And so our role is to help people to ultimately to self-learn. We still need others, but it's to be able to grow ourselves. So we're not always reliant on other people. And so part of the process is just by asking other questions. And if you don't know answers, then just say, I don't know. It's not that difficult, is it? And you can say, well, I'll go and find out. And then you go to someone who's further ahead than you and you say, I have this question come up. What do I do? And it's as simple as that. And so you learn from that. And then you've learned something again through being able to teach. So I think I was 11 when I first started teaching Sunday school with the kind of 5 and 6 year olds. And I learned so much because I was having to tell Bible stories and I was having to do stuff with these kids. And I had to make sure that I knew it myself. And so I think, we'll never all know enough, but we'll know enough to be able to pass on what we have learned ourselves. What to say or do, well, it depends on the purpose of meeting. If it's to help someone grow in faith, then use books. You can either say, we're going to have a look at the book of James in the Bible. It's a very practical book. It's only 5 chapters long, so 5 weeks. Why don't we just do that? And then say, what questions come up for us as we read through this? How on earth do you consider it joy when you hit hard times? Well, let's talk through that. What's my experience of, do you see? And so you can do it with that. You can do it with other authors and books. As I mentioned in my talk, Sam used God is Closer Than You Think when he was mentoring the young person. I think it was Ben. Yeah, I think it was a guy called Ben. And just doing a chapter at a time and meeting up and talking through what you've learned. And it's that kind of thing. For people who are new to faith, you can use the Alpha videos that are on YouTube. You can use starting point videos that are on I believe they're on YouTube as well. Or if not, you can get them from us. And just get them to watch a video and say, come on, what questions? And if people are wanting to learn, they'll make notes, they'll be asking questions. And then it's just a chance to be able to talk through, what have I learned through faith? And how do they relate to the questions that you're asking? So I would just say, you've just got to keep it simple. Don't make it highly pressured or, right now, I'm the mentor, you're the mentee. Now you've got to listen to this. Just not like that. So make it simple, make it relational, and make it accountable so that you're pushing them to put into practice what it is that they're reading and learning.
That's great. I think for me, one of the most pivotal moments growing up as a young person was a guy called John Ducker, who was, a little bit older than I was. I won't say how old he is, but him approaching me in church, I was probably 14, 15 and saying, hey, do you want to go for a coffee? It would be great to chat and just see how you're getting on. And for me, it was that friendship, that point where he invested in me was just something that that really helped at that point. And I think for him, the nervousness of maybe even approaching me, or the nervousness of thinking, well, what have I got to offer? If he hadn't have done that, I wouldn't have had what he offered.
Yeah.
So definitely, definitely want to reiterate everything that you just said there, Steve. So good. Jan, welcome, and thank you for your comment there. That's really appreciated. And Janet as well, who's watching, welcome. And if you've just joined the stream, if you've got any questions, we're about to finish. But if you've got any questions, stick them in the comments below. If you're watching this back online and it's not live, stick them in the comments, or send us a direct message via the inbox on Facebook, and we'll or via email maybe. And we'll look to address those questions next week. But we're going to be continuing, final part in the series, a shorter series this time, Better Together, this Sunday. Really excited to be sharing with you a little bit about, we've done intimacy with God, we've done community with insiders. We're looking at how do we have influence with others on Sunday. So I'm really excited to be sharing that then. But Steve, really grateful as always for your wisdom, and grateful for everybody who's tuning on, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week.